give folks a few more minutes to arrive. Hi to everyone who is joining us real time and everyone who's joining us after the fact. So, hard to believe it's been another year
of volunteer monitoring. If you want to take a minute and just introduce yourself in the chat. Love to see who you are and who you're with. I know we've got a couple of different programs represented tonight. Imagine a few more watching this virtually. Rebecca, I didn't see you join in. Hi there.
Sorry, I've been hitting admit on some of them too.
Yeah, just sneaking right in. Yeah, oh yeah. Volunteer naturalist representing tonight. Suzanne is also a volunteer naturalist, as well as South Dakota Sierra Club, Friends of the Big Sioux, Living River group of the Sierra Club. Yes. Great. So, all right. I'll go ahead and turn down our soulful solo guitar. We'll go ahead and get started. So, hi everyone. Our agenda tonight is, well, we're doing this now. Welcome and a little bit of housekeeping. You all are doing your introductions in the chat. And I just wanted to encourage everyone to join the South Dakota Volunteer Monitoring Network. We currently have 16 subscribers, and this is a old school listserv. I think they're called groups now because the technology is technically different. But it allows us for Jordan and I to talk to you as well as you to talk to each other. So I'd really like to have this be a more active group. About the only time we use it is to let you know when we're gearing up and when we're winding down. But it'd be cool if we could have more conversations. This is what the groups page looks like, and I'll put in the chat. If you want to just send an email to subscribe, that will add you to the network. And don't worry about being spammed with email. I think we've sent like 7 this entire year. So we're going to hear tonight from Jordan Fostet of the South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources. And for those of you who have been with us the last few years, Jordan's doing something a little different tonight. So I imagine she'll kind of go over some of the things she's talked about in the past, but there's also new stuff which I'm excited about. We'll hear about a little bit of Macro Blitz highlights from me from the South Dakota Discovery Center. Yay. Macro Blitz, if you don't know what that is, we'll take some time and talk about that. And then I'm sure the question that you're all wondering about is what's happening to volunteer monitoring in 2026. And it's good news, but I'll go into the details at the end of the meeting. So with that, I will stop sharing so Jordan can start sharing, and I will pass the mic over to Jordan.
Thank you. I gotta get my screens all set up. So, all right. I'm Jordan Fawcett, as Ann mentioned, and today I just wanted to say thanks to everyone for all of the hard work that you did this summer. I really appreciate it. We got a lot of data that came in from the summer, and I just want to talk about what all of that data means today. So I'll go through some of the water quality parameters that you all sample for and explain what they mean and why we even look at them. That part, some of you have probably seen before. We do that every year. But I also wanted to talk a little bit more about how the Department of Agriculture uses all of the data and some of the reporting and implementation projects that we have. Because I think every single volunteer has asked me, like, now what? What are you going to do about this kind of stuff? So here's the sample counts from this year. So there's a lot of data coming in from you guys, mostly E. coli. So 237, it's like the really high amount of E. coli samples. A lot of nitrate and nitrite as well. So thanks for collecting all of that data. Speaking of E. coli, this is something that almost everyone samples for, I think. It's an indicator of fecal contamination, and it can cause gastrointestinal illnesses and respiratory illnesses. It has lots of sources. It comes from pet waste, sewage systems, runoff from city streets, agriculture, even wild animals contribute E. coli to streams and lakes. Total suspended solids, that's just the organic and inorganic matter that won't pass through a filter, so just the dirt in the water, as you can see there on those filters. Mostly comes from soil erosion and runoff. We look at this because high suspended solids can have a negative impact on fish. It reduces the depth that sunlight can get through the water, and it also kind of disrupts their nests for some of the fish that create beds for their eggs and everything. So suspended solids isn't necessarily always unnatural or bad. It just depends on the area. So in South Dakota, we have a lot of variability across the state. So Rapid Creek on the left there, that's below or above Paxtola near Rochford. I took that picture. The suspended solids there is about 12 milligrams per liter. And then the picture on the right is the White River as it comes through the Badlands. The average TSS result on the White River is 4,000 milligrams per liter. But they both streams support fish life, and because of that, there's actually specific water quality standards that the state developed just to apply to the White River. We also look at total dissolved solids, and that kind of ties in with conductivity too. Dissolved solids is the measure of salts, minerals, and ions dissolved into the water. That changes the conductivity of the water. The more ions, the more conductive the water will be, which is just a measure of how well the water will conduct electricity. Waters with high dissolved solids and high conductivity are mostly a concern for irrigation and stock watering. If there's a lot of ions in the water, it disrupts the soil when that water is used for irrigation, so it prevents nutrient uptake in plants. So that's why there's standards for that. Again, total dissolved solids is not always a bad thing. It's actually something they advertise in Moccasin Springs and Hot Springs, is that all of these dissolved ions in their springs there. So that's one way you can think of imagining this, even though you can't see it. Kind of a case study here. The Grand River up in the northwestern part of the state, it comes out of Shade Hill Reservoir, if anyone's familiar with that area. The Grand River has really high conductivity and high dissolved solids. This is partially because of the geology of the area. It's just naturally more saline. And these factors all affect how plants absorb nutrients from the soil. So that's why the Grand River isn't really used for irrigation by ranchers up there. Alkalinity is a measure of the resistance of a water body to changes in pH. So it's also called the buffering capacity. This is a picture of a limestone cave, and this illustrates buffering capacity in the way that the limestone rock neutralizes the acid in the water that may be present. So this is a system that's naturally buffering. We look at a lot of different types of nutrients, and we have 3 different types of nitrogen that the volunteers sample for. We sample for all these different types of nitrogen because the nitrogen cycle, which is this picture here, it goes through really fast. So we want to look at all different types of nitrogen throughout the different parts of the cycle. So nitrate and nitrite. Nitrate is something that causes blue baby syndrome. It's something that happens in young children when they drink water that has high nitrates. It prevents oxygen from binding from blood cells, so that's why they turn blue. It affects babies more than adults. That's why it's called blue baby syndrome. Nitrate is readily absorbed by plants and algae because it's the most bioavailable form of nitrogen in that cycle. So common sources of the nitrate and nitrite are fertilizer runoff. This is a tile drain, so that's water that's being piped from below a field straight into the stream. Also look at ammonia. Ammonia is another form. It's really toxic to aquatic life. It can also cause blue-green algae to produce and release toxins. Total Keldol nitrogen is the way we look at organic nitrogen. Organic nitrogen is just the nitrogen that's tied up in living things in the water. So the plants, nitrogen in the fish, in the soil. Organic nitrogen is not readily available to plants and algae, so it doesn't contribute to these big blooms, but it does flip back and forth. So we want to know how much organic nitrogen is there so we can compare it. One of the ways that we compare all of these types of nitrogen is by calculating total nitrogen. Total nitrogen is what's displayed on the WQMAP dashboard, like this graph here from Swan Lake. So it gives you an idea of all of the types of nitrogen in the system. So for frame of reference, the Swan Lake average, Swan Lake is on the east side of the state, kind of by Sioux Falls area, I think. But the average total nitrogen in Swan Lake was 3.28 milligrams per liter versus Deerfield Lake on the western side of the state in the Black Hills that has an area surrounded by national forest land. The nitrogen is only 0.2 milligrams per liter. A big difference there. Phosphorus is another type of nutrient that we monitor for. It has many sources. It can come naturally from the soil in the area. It's also applied to fields as a fertilizer. It comes from livestock waste, leaking septic systems, and from wastewater treatment plants. Just like it is a fertilizer for farmers in their fields, it also contributes to algal growth and aquatic plant growth. So we've seen in Mina Lake, in one eastern side of the state, the phosphorus we've seen there on average is 1.268 milligrams per liter, which still sounds pretty low, but then you compare that to Deerfield Lake, which has 0.016 milligrams per liter phosphorus on average. So all of these nutrients contribute to algal blooms. One of the things we monitor to look at algal blooms is chlorophyll A. Chlorophyll A is a specific pigment in algae and other plants. So you can see it on this strip right there. It's a strip that separates all the pigments of algal cell. So it's that deep green one. It's a response variable, so that means we use it as a proxy to look at harmful algal blooms. So the more chlorophyll A we find in a sample, we can kind of correlate that to algal blooms and toxins in the water. So that's why we use it. A lot of the things that we sample for are kind of redundant, but in a good way. It provides a system of checks and balances. So chlorophyll and microcystin correlate, the conductivity and dissolved solids correlate. So we can always check ourselves by comparing different results. Microcystin is the most common cyanotoxin in South Dakota lakes. This is kind of what we see when we see these big green harmful algal blooms. This is a really bad one, but microcystin is a hepatotoxin, so that means that it affects the liver. In humans, it can cause abdominal pain, headache, sore throat, vomiting and nausea, dry cough, diarrhea, blistering, and pneumonia. We haven't had any reports of any of those symptoms in South Dakota, so that's good. But it can kill livestock and pets that drink affected waters, and we have had some reports of dogs getting into harmful algal blooms and having to receive emergency vet care. So if you see a bloom that looks like that, I would keep your dog away from it. This is why we say when in doubt, stay out, because these two blooms, you might say one looks worse than the other, or they both look bad, but we can't know for sure when a bloom is going to release toxins. So this picture on the left was taken in Big Stone Lake, July 28th in 2024, and the closest sample to that date was taken the 29th, and the toxin result was only 0.645 micrograms per liter. That sample was actually taken by a volunteer, so that's cool to be able to use that and have a picture for reference. But on the other side, Wall Lake, that picture was taken July 30th, and the closest sample we have to link to that was taken on July 16th, and it had a result of 100,000 micrograms per liter of microcystin. So it's always good to exercise caution whenever you see any sort of bloom that looks like this. That's all the different parameters that volunteers monitor, and with all of the results that we tallied up at the beginning, everyone wants to know, what do we do with that? So this is kind of how South Dakota Department of Agriculture uses this water quality data. This is specifically about the Watershed Protection Program, which is the program that I'm in. This program, we kind of split into two different branches called assessment and implementation. I'm on the assessment side. So on that side, we do all of the data collecting, and then we analyze all of that data to determine if water bodies are impaired. And then we write reports on those water bodies that are impaired. So then that flips over to implementation. The implementation side of the program, they have 319 funding through the Clean Water Act, and they support projects that aim to improve these impaired water bodies. So this is kind of how assessment determines what's impaired. So we take all of the water quality monitoring data. So that includes all of the data that's collected through state projects and the volunteer data and other programs that might be monitoring water in South Dakota. All of that gets combined. All of the South Dakota data is uploaded to our database called NR92, and it goes to the EPA database. So they can use it all too. We also use that data in web apps. So we have WQMap, the HABS map, and the EPA has How's My Waterway. So a lot of this data is publicly accessible to everyone to download. But internally, the department does assessment, and that assessment produces integrated reports, actually called the Integrated Report for Surface Water Quality. But that report contains something called the 303D list and the 305B report. All of this reporting is required under the Clean Water Act. But these lists just determine if a water body is impaired or unimpaired. An impaired water body is not meeting its assigned water quality standards, and an unimpaired water body is meeting all of its water quality standards. So then these impaired water bodies would then have to have a TMDL written. That's something called a total maximum daily load, which I'll explain more in a second. But keep referencing standards and impaired and unimpaired. But this is a table of numeric criteria assigned to beneficial uses of surface waters of the state. That's what they call it. That just means water quality standards. So this is in all of the integrated reports, but it's a table of the 11 beneficial uses that can be assigned to a water body of the state. Beneficial use is just determined on what a water body is typically used for. So you have domestic water supply, the type of fish life that it supports, and use for irrigation or industry. So then there's each parameter that you sample for. Highlighted are the ones that volunteers sample for. So for E. coli, there is a standard for immersion recreation, limited contact recreation, and those numbers are listed there. So if you're interested about standards, you can look all of this up in the integrated report. If you have any questions on it, because it's kind of confusing, you can email me or call me whenever. So this is the reporting. Integrated reports, like I mentioned, they're published every 2 years. They're required under the Clean Water Act. The 305B report is a detailed report on the status of all the lakes and streams monitored by the state. So that includes their impairment determination, their beneficial uses, and the status of the TMDL reports that they have. The 303D list is just a streamlined version of that, and it lists all the water bodies that are impaired in the state and that need a TMDL. 305B report's more of a comprehensive report of everything in the state. So it's nice to look at that as a reference. I use it all the time. So the 2026 IR will be published this April. It's a new format. We'll have all of the 100-page documents like we usually do, but we're hoping to have it be easier for you guys to use. We're working on making it into an interactive story map, kind of like the volunteer map that's on the website. And another fun thing with all of the volunteer data in the use for the integrated report is that there's streams that the volunteers monitor that haven't been assessed yet under previous integrated reports that are now getting enough data to be assessed in the 2026 IR. So I might be reaching out to some of you, the groups that have those waterways, to talk about that. So that's exciting. So then there's the total maximum daily load reports that come out on the impaired water bodies. TMDL just details the maximum amount of the pollutant that's allowed to persist in the water body and still have that water body meet its water quality standards. This equation includes point source pollution and non-point source pollution. Point source pollution is identified sources of pollution, so it's like directly discharged from factories or water treatment facilities or industry. These point sources have to abide by permitting requirements under the EPA, but the non-point source pollution comes from many different sources across the landscape, and it's usually carried into the waterway by runoff or snowmelt, so we can't really pinpoint where it's from. Non-point source pollution is specifically what the Watershed Protection Program looks at. This is an example of that 305B report. So it lists the water body, where it is, all of the uses assigned to it, how it's supporting those uses, what's impaired and what's unimpaired. And then this EPA category refers to the report status, so if it has a TMDL or not. You don't have to read all of these, but basically there's all these different categories determined by the EPA of if a water body has all of its uses met, all the way to if it's impaired and needs a TMDL, or if it's impaired and has an approved TMDL. So you can see in the state, there's a summary in that picture there that has all of the different categories and how many stream miles and assessment units fall under each of those categories. So for water bodies that are impaired and a TMDL is needed, there's 89 assessment units. Assessment units are those individual water body AUIDs. That's also what we refer to as an assessment unit. So 89 in need of a TMDL, 56 that have all of their uses met, and 27 that have an approved TMDL with the EPA. So then after all these TMDL reports get written, we hand over all of the data to implementation, and they use it to design projects for the 319 non-point source management program. This program is also under the Clean Water Act. It provides funding for water quality improvement projects. They aim to improve water quality by implementing best management practices. BMPs is what you'll see them called a lot. This includes irrigation improvements, grazing restrictions, restoration of riparian vegetation. So that's a picture of cows directly by the stream bank. So a best management practice would be fencing them out and providing alternate water sources for them so they're not tromping through the stream directly. So there's quite a few active 319 water quality improvement projects in the state. That map shows the kind of range that they're working in. There's one in the Belle Fourche Watershed District, Prairie Coteau Watershed Improvement Project, one in the Big Sioux. There's a soil health improvement planning project, and most exciting, there's the South Dakota Non-Point Source Information and Education Project, and that's actually the project that funds the volunteer monitoring in a kind of roundabout way. So that's interesting. So we have quite a few of these projects going on. I linked some of the websites to these projects, but there's more reports that they have to publish that are on the water, or pardon, on the department website as well, if you're interested in reading about some of these improvements that they're trying to implement in your area. That brings me to more of the volunteer resources. So a lot of this information that I covered today, you can find at these sources. And if you want to explore something for yourself, I'd recommend that you start with some of these websites. So there's the Watershed Protection website that details all of the projects going on in watershed protection. That includes the harmful algal bloom story map. It's an interactive map that has all of the microcystin results for the summer. WQMap is the interactive map that has all of the other water quality data results. So you can see your stations and click on your station, and it'll pop up with all of the results. And then it has that dashboard that I showed of the graphs and a few other slides. That's where you can find those. The EPA also uses all of this data, and they have a website called How's My Waterway? So you can search your lake or river specifically, and it will give you a report on how it's doing and what reports they have listed for it. There's also the website that has all of the South Dakota integrated reports. South Dakota has published an integrated report every 2 years since 1998. Even in 1998, they were called something different, but compared to other states, it's actually, we've been very consistent with those. There's some states that don't get them out every 2 years, even though it's a requirement under the Clean Water Act. So go South Dakota. And there's also the South Dakota Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources public notices page. So all of the reports that I referenced today, the TMDLs and the integrated report, those get posted to that page. That's actually the wrong link. I'm going to fix that before I send it out. Let me write that down. I just noticed that. But if you Google South Dakota Department of Agriculture public notices, the page will pop up too. But there's actually a period of public comment on the integrated report and all TMDLs. So if you want to keep an eye on that, you can submit public comment on reports pertaining to water bodies near you. So that's kind of all I had for today. If you have any questions, we can open it up to the floor now, but you can also email me whenever you want. In the past, I always offer to do individual reviews of your group's data. So we can set up a one-on-one meeting with your group to kind of go over your results for the summer and discuss what it all means and the status of the water body. So there's my email, and I'll open it up for any questions or comments.
Well, while people are either putting things in the chat or collecting their thoughts, I'll just jump in that, first of all, I'm so excited to hear that volunteer monitoring data is going to be started to be integrated into assessment. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I have to give props to Jesse, who was your predecessor. Some of you know Jesse, and to you, Jordan, because you really did set this program up that create usable data. And I hear the chatter from other states' volunteer monitoring programs, and they are not structured that way. You know, the expectation is groups use their data for their own purposes, but I'm very glad that we have the number and the quality, the quantity and quality of volunteers, that it's turning out to be productive and useful for you.
Yeah. I think the 2024 report, Clay Creek, that the Vermilion Group monitors, that had enough data to be assessed. And then I think there's another few that the Vermilion Group monitor that are going to be assessed this year. And then I think the other ones are some of the ones that Rebecca Turk samples. So that's exciting.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
That's really
Love
cool.
the reactions.
Sorry. Sorry. I was just
You're
saying.
You're with your pod, Rebecca. Go ahead.
I was saying to my husband, I'm like, I wonder if Nichols Creek is one of those.
That has enough data. I do actually have a question though, and that is,
Yeah.
Jordan, because I have started the temperature protocol recently, what I
Mhm.
was wondering is like, I don't do I need to like provide a temperature on my blank sample? Because I'm like, I don't know where to put that sucker because I don't want to like contaminate the jug of distilled water or the samples when I'm using it.
Oh, no, for the blank samples, you don't have to fill out any of the site information
Okay.
or the like temperature information.
Temperature. Yeah, that's what I've been doing, but I just wanted to check and make sure that was right. Thank you.
Yeah, that is right.
And I know last year, Jordan, you reached out to me and oh well, I'll let you I don't know if you see Kathy's
Yep,
question.
I
What
see it.
qualifies? Yeah, let's go ahead and answer that before I jump into another question about monitoring plans.
So for a waterway to be included in the report, it has to be a waters of the state. So that's in the laws of the South Dakota. There's a list of all of these water bodies. It's in the administrative rules of South Dakota. So that's how we determine if we need to assess the water body. And then from there, we start collecting data on it. But then to be included in the report, it also has to meet minimum data requirements, which I think we've talked about in the orientation. Minimum data requirements. This is the actual old integrated report. That's a giant book that no one ever wants to read, but it's in here. It's for streams. It's I think 20 samples over so many years, and there's a different requirement for lakes. Let me find it here. So basically, it just has to be identified as a water of the state, has to have assessment data collected on it, and it has to meet the minimum data requirements, and then it can be included in the integrated report for assessment. So yeah, criteria for determining support status in the integrated report. For streams, minimum of 20 samples collected on separate days. And then for lakes, minimum of 2 samples within 3 years. So there's a table that kind of details that in the integrated report. How can we help? So Anna had a question, how can we help bring attention to your findings report in our communities? I guess just share the website, let people know that these reports are out there and that there's periods for public comment. There's also something else I was going to mention, that there's water development districts across the state. I had a map of that. So these water development districts sponsor some of the implementation projects we have. And they also have, come on, local meetings where they can discuss projects that they want to provide funding for. So I would recommend getting in contact with your local water development district. Here's a map of all of those districts. And if you just Google like West Dakota district, you can find their website and find their contact information and start going to those meetings and bring up these issues that you want them to address. And these development districts are funded by your tax dollars in that area. So you're paying them. So they're a good resource.
Jordan, I would also encourage your social media team when you publish a report. You know, I know it's like it feels kind of dry, but we now have a small but dedicated group of people that will make sure that the posts get reshared or will click through and read.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, I would
Yeah.
encourage that.
I guess so. The public notice webpage is public notices for every program. So it's also for some of the other permits that get posted, that's where those public notices go. So I don't know how I'd get the social media team to have a post every time one of those gets out there. I'm trying to think about how I could ask them to do that.
Or
The pub,
I suppose being that I'm the information, education, and outreach person, I should probably we could start integrating that to the Discovery Center. Does the public notice have an email list? Because I will. Yeah. All right.
I'm not sure.
Rebecca
It
says
might.
they do. All
They
right.
do? Okay.
I will go ahead and start looking for that. And then you can like all the South Dakota Discovery Center social media platforms, and we will be pushing it out through our social media. And if you sign up for our subscribe to our volunteer monitoring group, we'll start pushing it out through that as well. And I'll
Yeah.
go ahead and put that into the chat again for those who came in late.
I was gonna say something I forgot. Oh, all the public notices for the TMDLs that Watershed Protection Program publishes, we also have to put notices in local newspapers. So if you have local newspapers, it gets put in those too. So maybe if the local papers post something, then you could share that as well.
Did you see Joan's question?
Oh, what bodies of water are the targets that would be more useful to collect? Oh, like what would we want to prioritize for sampling? So specifically for the watershed protection program, because we look at non-point source pollution and we don't really know where it's coming from, and we want to get an idea of everything everywhere. There's not really a target other than just every single water body is important for us to look at. But specifically, if there's a water body in your area that has less data, then that would be a priority to sample that for volunteers. So some of the lakes and rivers in more remote areas have less data than something like Sylvan Lake in the Black Hills. So we definitely want to get people out there to sample some of those water bodies. Suzanne, several of the streams are often dry. If we collect once in a season for these, does the data still count? The data still counts. It might not necessarily meet the minimum data requirements to be assessed, but the streams that you monitor could also be, that data could also be considered in future reports for the Vermilion River because they're all tributaries of the Vermilion River. So it doesn't follow the whole pathway that I was talking about of assessment impaired TMDL's implementation, but it could still be used in reports for the Vermilion River for sure. And hopefully, maybe if there's a wet year, if there's enough data that it can actually be assessed. So I know that's not a super hopeful answer, but generally suggested to sample a water body you can reliably visit once a month. Yeah, we like to do at least once a month. That's what we sample for our projects is we look at streams once a month and then lakes because we have so many that we look at in our region. We do 3 times over the field season. The Friends of the Big Sioux group, I think they monitor more frequently, once a week, or is it twice a month or something like that? I think Emily's here if she can answer that. So if you have the ability to get a group together where you can monitor more frequently, that you can do that as well. And if we have the funding for it, but that's Anne's problem.
I will say, so wait, here's another
Oh, yeah.
question coming.
Emily, Friends of the Big Sioux, they sample every week. Okay.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
So you're alternating water bodies every other week.
Oh. Emily, how many people do you have that do sampling for you?
Yeah, so it really kind of varies. Right now we've had our intern do it, and then she didn't have a car, so we had one of our board members take her out every week. But we've done it with different volunteers in the past, and that's been a little bit more difficult. So we've tried to just keep it to our staff instead.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of monitoring.
Yeah. Pretty wide area too that your group covers as well.
Yeah, Del Rapids down to Akron.
Yep.
So I know looking ahead to next year, if anybody has to rewrite their monitoring plan, because it's every other year, correct?
Yeah.
Um, Probably best to reach out to Jordan sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I have a list of everyone's plans and like when they expire. So last year I was reaching out to people. So I'll probably do that this spring.
Because if you reach out early enough, you can write in the temperature and get a
Yeah.
thermometer. So, all right. Well, if any more questions come in, feel free to put them in the chat. Well, we're going to kind of change course here a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen again, and we
Yeah.
can talk
Oh,
about macroblitz. That's okay. And I'll go ahead and, all right. So nope, I want screen one. All right. Some of you have seen this video, some of you haven't. It's a little bit of an overview about macroblitz. Macroblitz was originally funded by National Geographic, and they're all about the sizzle. So this is the sizzle video for macroblitz.
Freshwater macroinvertebrates are these incredible tiny creatures that play a big role in the functioning of ecosystems. They're the base of many food chains and really good indicators of the general health of freshwater systems. My name is Dalal Hanna. I'm a Canadian National Geographic explorer and freshwater conservation scientist. My research brings me into freshwater systems to collect all kinds of information, but some of my most favorite information to collect is macroinvertebrate information, because macroinvertebrates are really cool. They nest into the sand and thrive in freshwaters throughout the world, and they are excellent indicators of overall freshwater health. I got involved with the Macroblitz project because I think macroinvertebrates are this awesome, sort of secret treasure hiding in the streams and rivers that I'd love for more people to get the chance to connect with. These tiny insects make their homes on the rocks, leaves, and branches at the bottom of streams and rivers. There are so many different kinds of them, each with their special features and skills. And when you stop and take the time to get a closer look, you realize just how wonderful they are. But unfortunately, the abundance of macroinvertebrates is declining. And although we know that this is a problem we need to try to solve, scientists can barely keep track of what's going on. So to me, Macroblitz is a way to address that. It's a way for everyone to get involved, to help document what's happening to macroinvertebrates around the world, so that we can find ways to protect them.
A beautiful goose! Look at its gills! It's awesome!
I've always loved freshwaters, but as an educator and a parent, my understanding of just how important they are has deepened. We need to protect them and all the beautiful creatures that inhabit them, including the small but mighty macroinvertebrates. So come on, join us. Find your local stream, soak in its beauty, flip a rock, take a picture, upload it to iNaturalist, and Macroblitz. This collaborative effort has so much to teach us all.
whenever I see that, I always want to run right out and go start macro blitzing. I'm going to show you a little bit about some macro blitzing stuff. I'll come back to this in a moment. This is what the project looks like in South Dakota. Macro blitz, we collect information on, well, let me just go ahead and look up the full-blown macro blitz project. I realize that we have a bunch of different things, but we collect information on, so look at the observations, obviously mussels, insects. We have a hardcore mussel observer in South Dakota, our arthropods, and crustaceans, which are also a type of arthropod. So, and this is normally one of the cool, interesting things about the MacroBlitz project is that aquatic macroinvertebrates are usually intended for water quality analysis. And when Jesse and I were talking about the project, I'll just keep strolling here, about what does an aquatic macroinvertebrate project look like in South Dakota, he was pretty clear that he did not want a traditional one that would score out to a water quality index. Because honestly, most water quality macroinvertebrate projects aren't intended for prairie streams in particular. And prairie streams are naturally warm, slow, and highly sedimented. And when you look at the pollution tolerance indexes of aquatic macroinvertebrates, those automatically say impaired, impaired, impaired. Your lake is polluted, your stream's polluted, when it's not. It's just a prairie stream. So I can understand his concern. So I decided that probably just the best way to do it would just be to do a sort of a documentation of presence. What is there? And so lots of, like I'm saying, lots of mussels. So we'll go over here to the this I believe is the nymph, and these are the pictures of, you can see where the nymphs have been observed. Lots of blank spaces, sadly, but we're going to change that. And when we go over here to the grid, you can see that we see quite a variety. You know, we have our back swimmers, and we've got mayflies and lots of dragonflies. They're kind of my favorite. I mean, I love all of them. Damselflies. And it provides sort of a snapshot of just what's there, what's abundant enough to be scooped up in a net and just easily observed. The idea is that is literally your collection protocol. The higher rigor protocol is you have 100-meter stretch and you have set up 11 transects 10 meters apart, and you follow this ABC monitoring pattern. And then you put everything you collect into alcohol and ship it off to a lab for identification. And, you know, that's high rigor, but it's also takes a long time to do. It's really a lot to ask of a volunteer. Whereas just going out to a stream or a lake with some accessible equipment and using your phone, most of my pictures were taken with my phone actually, and a little clip on. I recently treated myself and I upgraded to a quote unquote real macro camera, but it's just very accessible. And so I want to show you, I took a group of students from Ogallala Lakota College. They have what's called a bridge program, and where they work with high school kids to help bridge them into college. And this is actually a drawing of a picture I took of them this summer doing macroinvertebrate work. You know, I'm a little reluctant to put them on there. Facial recognition software is out of control these days. You know, they're minors, et cetera, et cetera. But hopefully, even in the drawing, you can see the energy and the engagement that they were having in the project. And interestingly enough, this is what they found. They found a lot of damselflies and dragonflies. And I've been doing this long enough that what I'm thinking as I'm seeing this, I'm not seeing a lot of chironomids. I mean, you do see some of these little scuds here, but my experience is that when you are seeing a lot of the predators of the aquatic macroinvertebrates, you're looking at a pretty healthy system. We're not seeing, of course, the stone flies. We have one little mayfly here. Those tend to be like indicators of very good, quote unquote, good water quality. And by good, it's cold flow and cold, fast moving, highly oxygenated, and uh, low sedimentation. This is still on the prairie. It was on Porcupine Creek. Next summer, when I go out with them, we'll also do some water quality testing. So it's just a cool snapshot of what you can do with the project. It can be anywhere from a high school class, a 4-H group, a scout group, an undergrad ecology class, a group of volunteer naturalists. We've done that. So I'm hoping that when we gear up next spring, that you'll take advantage of some of the online trainings, find out how you can get a set of equipment, and help contribute to this important effort. We're still good on time. So that's just my short commercial for Macro Blitz. So I'm sure most of you are wanting to know about the next volunteer monitoring season. Jordan alluded to the fact that this project is funded by 319 money, which is a state and tribal assistance grant. Let me go ahead and turn on my laser pointer here. Currently, I have funding through August of 2026. And so we should have enough money to keep funding the volunteer monitoring project at its current level through then. The state and tribal assistance grants, the STAGs, I've been told to suspect or anticipate, I guess that's probably a better word, a 15% cut. We still don't know, that nothing has been approved, especially with the shutdown. Things are pretty quiet. So, what has been communicated to me by my project officer and his boss is that we will have the money. We have the money now, but we're going to move forward, but we can't tell you how much just yet. So I did submit what's called my PIP, my project implementation plan, and volunteer monitoring is very much a part of it. I also did for the South Dakota Volunteer Naturalists, I did include some of that funding as well, because South Dakota Volunteer Naturalists are a good pot, a recruiting pool, for lack of a better word, for the volunteer monitors. So we have 2 volunteer groups. Volunteer naturalists are also a good group. You get trained and you have a geography of South Dakota every year, and we always try to throw in some speakers and things throughout our year and our member meetings. So we're constantly integrating and weaving in the watershed work into that space as well. But getting back to my project implementation plan, it will be reviewed in December by the task force. That's a group of stakeholders and people interested in water quality issues, non-point source pollution control. That includes conservation districts, ag groups, government agencies, and they go through and they'll hear the presentations from all of us who are submitting proposals, project implementation plans, and then they'll make the recommendation. Then it goes to the Board of Water. And I'm a little hazy on the timing of this. So I think in January is the Board of Water. And then if it passes the Board of Water, which is the state board, it goes up to the EPA Region 8. And I will be notified in the spring of 2026 what is going to happen to that funding. So it looks good. It's not certain. The thing that does help it is that we are getting so much high quality data from this project, from the volunteer monitoring project, that I know Jordan's happy with it and Jesse's happy with it, and Jordan and Jesse's boss Paul, who's sort of the guy in Danner, probably the guy below the secretary most directly, is happy with this. I used to work with Paul way back in the day when he was not the guy. And so this is a good use of taxpayer dollars. It's achieving what it was set out to, engaging people in watersheds, contributing meaningfully to watershed health and protection. So stay tuned. I will update you as I learn things. So, any questions? Oh yeah. Yeah, don't we'll talk about identifying them when you upload them to iNaturalist, Kathy. That really is the hardest part, and there's a workaround. So you can basically you tag them, and then I look at the tag and I will help or get them down to as far as I can. Realistically, with a picture, you're only going to get them at best to family. I have there's a one phenom guy, stoneflies. He regularly gets them down to species. I don't know how he does it. Well, he's a PhD stonefly researcher. That's how he does it. I can't do it. So, um, yeah. So don't worry about being able to identify. We'll talk all about that in the training.
Yeah, people will just suggest IDs on iNaturalist a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's helpful.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, that is all we have for tonight. Yeah, feel free
I
to
guess
reach out. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
on the topic of bugs, I have one thing to mention. You reminded me of this, but the state, we do collect bug data. We do the samples kind of sampling that you talked about where we send it in. We use that for a reference site development project, but when we do the national surveys, we collect it for the national surveys. So that's the National Rivers and Streams Assessment. So I'll put that link in the chat, but you can download all of our bug data that we collected through that project. So I just did that. And it has all of the species that I identified in our bug samples for all of the streams that we sampled. So that's kind of interesting if anyone wants
Oh,
to look at that.
no, that is very cool. I will be looking through that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's it. I'm done now.
Oh, that's great. That's great. All right. Well, if you are interested in monitoring again next season, let us know. Otherwise, we will see you probably in April. Be looking for emails and communications from us in March. Talk about the April onboarding and orientation. Obviously, if you've been trained, you don't have to come, but it's always good to see familiar names in these events. So, and with that, I will stop recording. And